And good morning. Today we got another road map to the apocalypse here. I'm taking a road to the apocalypse, and we're going to take a look at some other items here. I was looking through just a quick run through of the road map here. I didn't go in and spot all of the changes to the road map yet. I got a spreadsheet somewhere. I just haven't taken the time to pull it out and look at it. But it does say at the bottom here, I pointed this out last time, they did update it as of build 13, so I had to go through and find what's changed. But until then, we still have a lot of stuff to talk about. So there's zones and building variety we'll talk about today. So with zones, it says we have yet to scratch the surface on the variety of zones we are currently developing, ranging from forests of all sorts, steep cliffs, cave systems, large cities, small towns, massive lakes, and even more variation of rural farmland and neighborhoods. Even then, we couldn't name them all right now. If you have imagined it, it's very likely we are already working on a plan to get it into the game. So right now it says it's at 40%. And just looking at the game, I mean, we do have some farmlands, we have the towns, there's forests, plains, so there is a little bit of variation. Mountains that are nearly impossible to climb. So here's a screenshot. This might be from an older build because the mountains don't quite look like that. This might be under the old engine because I think, yeah, I'm just trying to think how exactly it kind of looks. I wish almost I had like screenshots of an aerial shot of now and versus what we have here. This is probably with the older engine because it just doesn't quite match up with like build 12, build 13 stuff. But what we have though is a little variation already. The farmland has like crops and stuff like that. Oops, I went too far. I didn't mean to close the picture. But I'm definitely waiting for when they get finished tweaking the world generation. I think would actually make it a little more explorable, because currently with a lot of the mountains that are generated, they go virtually straight up, and you have no way to climb. And even some of the hills that you think aren't that steep are just pretty much a dead end for you. You can go down them easy enough, but getting up them is tough. And you might say, well, that makes sense in the real world. It's easy to go down any mountain. Some mountains you can't go up. So I guess with that reasoning, what would be cool then is if some of the equipment they add would be like some rock climbing equipment. Now, I haven't confirmed, because I haven't been able to go up a steep hill. I don't know if zombies can climb the hills. So here's what would be cool when you talk about zones. Sometimes in your zones you get generated these huge steep mountainsides. And I know in some of the videos of the playthroughs we have found some of these really tall, steep mountains. And now if you had some climbing gear, how cool would it be to scale the side of one of these steep mountains and put your home or base at the top of that? And if it's large enough on the top, you could do your farming, your crops, and have virtually an unscalable, defensible fortress. I think that would be very, very cool. Now, for some folks that might be boring after a while, knowing that you're virtually, safe forever from the zombie hordes, but at least your base would be. But think of it in terms of like the multiplayer, because I know some folks, when they think of multiplayer, they think of some of that PvP intermixed among the zombies. So let's take it from that point of view, how cool it would be then at that point. So you might be safe from the zombies, but can you imagine a night raid or something by a bunch of players that have the mountain climbing gear? They scale the side of the cliffs, and here they come, and if you're there defending and you look down, you're trying to shoot down the cliff side at these folks who are climbing. In my mind, that would make for some very interesting PvP scenarios, because I can't think of any games that I've played where in the multiplayer aspect there's climbing gear, because normally that's not very efficient in the middle of a big heated firefight to be climbing and shooting. That would be more of the clandestine part of it, infiltrating, because most people aren't always looking down the side of the mountain once they feel pretty safe. So it would make for some interesting stuff. Like, oh, how did you guys get here? Well, we climbed. Knowing that you can climb, maybe they would put sentries to be looking down every now and then. Or people got to climb when they think you're off. I mean, it just leads to a lot of interesting things when you think about their variations of zones and how to get around some of the obstacles. Now, the thing that's really going to help their zones in the future, though, is the graphical assets. Because right now we can walk through the forest, and the forests have these trees that's just, like weird psychedelic. You tilt your camera and the trees tilt. Some tilt with the camera, some tilt away. I mean, it looks just really odd. The tree graphics are not terrible, but when we talk about zones, we want to talk about realistic zones. And sometimes where you go places, the trees are just shooting straight up on into the house as if the house isn't there. So I think what would make the zones also feel more realistic instead of just having more types is when they get the world generation part down. So once they start adding their graphical assets, they also said that they'd be working on some of that coding as well to implement better skies, better trees. So just how they look is also going to help the zones. Because when I went through a forest or find a cabin in the forest, it would be nice to be able to look around and not have all the trees, bend and do different things and tilt away and with the camera. It just is very weird. So I think that will help. So yeah, more zone types might be nice. It would be interesting. Like right now they have rain. It would be interesting too if the zones would be covered by things like snow, because I think that would be very cool. Have a snow biome, or just that your world goes through some seasons, and so you do have snow. I think that would be interesting. Zone decoration might also be cool if like your crops wilted, because right now you walk through a crop of corn and it looks fine. So maybe droughts or something like that could also change how certain vegetations look. Now that's getting a little more deep because we're still in the framework stage of the game, but just looking down the road as to what would set the game apart, I think would be these really cool weather cycles, crop cycles. Now, because there's no one there to tend the crops, at some point when those crops die, then it's just big weeds. I get that. But if you want to do for semi-realistic simplicity's sake, you could just have the corn come and go in cycles. So there would be periods of no corn there, and then periods where you might be able to go through and find corn on the ground because the corn's in season. I understand there has to be somewhat simple mechanics. Oh, well, I guess with corn, that's why you would have farming. So I guess at some point you could have the world-generated corn just be dead, and then you're going to have to farm your own corn. Well, who knows? So there's still a lot to be thought about with the zone. It's just fun to talk about. Especially here in the early stages, because it's nice to say like where you would like things to go. But the zone names have been added, and they do have some interesting zone names. I believe this is how I think it's done. I think they just have like this huge database of names, and when the world is generated and you get to a spot and it has to procedurally generate in more content, it just kind of randomly picks names for some of them zones. And you get some interesting combinations there. So that's one thing that I enjoy to look at too. So the zones are pretty well covered. Now building variety, that one is more interesting to talk about. So right now that has Deadlinger currently features a wide variety of structures from suburban homes to stores and prison complexes. Numbers cannot count the buildings we are currently developing, ranging from massive city skyscrapers, small office buildings, large grocery stores, theaters, parks, lonely cabins found in the deep woods of the world. Our goal is to ensure the variety of buildings enhances the visuals and the gameplay, giving survivors hundreds of unique places to explore, fortify, and scavenge. This is just a small taste of what is coming. Now they're at 30% of buildings. Now this has probably one of the best building systems for a game of this type that I've seen. Even better than some of the DayZ mods I've seen, or the Infestation Survivor Stories. because both of those games have a lot of buildings in them, and like I think they do a good job of representing cities. And if you look at the California maps for infestation stories, I've seen some videos on that. They look impressive. Wow, like you feel like those are huge cities. They're really well, decorated out. The problem is they have a lot of buildings you can't enter. They're just decoration. Now with the Dead Linger so far, every building I have seen is a building that you can enter. And then you can, explore it, maybe find some loot, or you can turn it into a base if you wanted to take the time to fortify it. And I think that's pretty amazing, is having that open world to explore. Um, of the places I've seen currently as far as structures or buildings, there's the farmhouse with its attached barn and the silos. There's the um, like just the various randomly designed houses. Now the houses, my understanding was they used to be all completely randomly generated, and now I guess there's several types that are kind of fixed because when they were randomly being created, it looked made some weird structures. But now they'll have like a bunch of templates or something they can pull from. Let's see what else have we got. The prison. There's the small, like 7-Eleven type store, the big grocery store, and I haven't gone into the big grocery store, but I guess they've made some more changes to it. Just trying to think what else is there. I'm sure there's a structure. Well, then there's like the water towers. I think it's a water tower. I remember climbing up something. Yeah, there's like a water tower you can climb up. So there's a few buildings and structures that you can go into, and I think that is pretty nice because the world is open to you. So if you can get to it, you can go into it. Now I have seen. Oh, did I mention the big, huge office building? But now they have shown some pictures of some of the like the skyscrapers they're making, and what would be neat is if those skyscrapers were modular. So from my current understanding, they're building one skyscraper right now, and it has a lobby, and they've put it together, but it's like one size. With skyscrapers, I think it would be cool if they set it up to where those floors could stack variably. So it would pick like between maybe one, like maybe 5 levels and 10 levels. So if you went to one of those city zones, then you would automatically have generated a whole bunch of variably sized buildings. And then like they might have a limit, between 5 and 10. So if it was 7 stories high, then we would know that the 7th module would be the roof, and then all the stairs. So they would pretty much be identical on the inside, but on the outside they would be varying heights, because when you go through a city, they're not all one height. There's various size of skyscrapers. So I think that would be very cool to see. Um, Buildings that we've talked about, which would be fun, would be maybe like military outposts with the tents and things like that, so you can find equipment. We've talked about schools, hospitals. I'm trying to think. The one thing I haven't seen, and it's not quite a building, but I think needs to be part of the landscape, are cemeteries. Because right now it's like, where are all these dead people coming from? So cemeteries need to get thrown in there, and possibly the funeral home that goes with it. Um, what else would be fun to see? They said that they have lots of buildings currently coming out. Well, when you get the lakes and the rivers, then you might at some point have to have like the marinas. A person could really go on and on. I haven't seen like a Cabela's hunting store where you can go get hunting rifles and survival food and stuff like that. So you could technically potentially have a whole lot of buildings that you could populate your town with, and that would actually make it very, very cool, because you could find a town and then decide, is this where we want to set up camp, go through, kill the zombies, and make this our place, because there's so much to have here. So I think they have a good start. It'll be nice to see more buildings, and there is another building coming. I just don't know at what point. Now, they have put out on a feed that they've given us a lot of teaser stuff, like the Zombowl, and there's some boar and the female model, and they've talked about the skyscraper stuff. But there's no planned release schedule for any of that. I know some folks were hoping that some of that would come in Build 13, but the teaser information is just that. It's stuff for the future. So even though they've shown us the skyscraper building that they're working on, there's no guarantee of when that will come out until they're ready to put it in the game. But I'm definitely ready to see some more zone variations, like a winter zone would be kind of cool. Um, I'm also waiting to see some of the more building types come, and there is one on the way. I just don't know, even though it's like a skyscraper, it reminds me a little much of like a skinnier version of the office building. Like they have an office building already, and now they're just making like a tall building. I think I would much rather see some schools or hospitals or something of that nature before I see another office type building. But, you know, they got to build what they got to build in the order that they got their assets ready. So anyway, that's a pretty good discussion, I think, covering a couple topics here for the world, because we've covered all Survivor, we covered all the creatures and vehicles. All of these topics here on out are a lot shorter than the Survivor gameplay, so we'll get through them a lot quicker, and then I can go back and find the differences from Build 12 or what's been updated with the latest roadmap. So thank you all for watching. Maybe share some zone types that you want to see. Maybe you want to see lava, go out to Hawaii, islands once the water comes. Buildings, maybe there's a specific building you find creepy, like a carnival might be. That's not necessarily a building, but you know, having that kind of area, you know, yeah, the creepy clown zombie at the carnival would be something fun. You know, so go ahead and share what you would like to see, or maybe you have something in the game that you like already that you want to see improved upon. So share some thoughts. We'll have a little discussion, and I will talk to you later. Bye.